My name is Dmitry Glukhovsky. I'm a book author from Russia. Well, first of all, I think that the prize is very important because it gives a lot of attention and understanding, an attempt to understand what's going on in Russian political, social, cultural life, as to better understand the roots, the origins of what's going on right now, and of ways to cure it possibly, because definitely that reminds of a deadly disease. Without proper understanding of the processes ongoing in the Russian society and between the society and the regime, no solution to that problem can be found. So pragmatically, Russia requires study, and Russia requires definitely understanding, because any conflict would inevitably bring a very superficial perception from outside of the warring parties, that it would kind of like breed a wish just to win the war, just to crush the adversary, but it's not that. It's you have to understand what are the motives, how we could have landed in this situation, and I, as a Russian author, do insist that Russian society is not directly implicated in this war, and it should not be fought against. It should be understood and cured. And that's, I think, a great mission of culture. Culture is, yes, it is the system of coordinates in which we all operate, but it's also a cure to a lot of issues that a national psyche can go through. So choosing such a great range of books dedicated to completely different issues in Russia's present, past and future, attempting to understand the mechanisms behind the seemingly inevitable historical processes, is very important to know what to do next. And at this point, although definitely the events that are happening are very dramatic and tragic, I wouldn't say that we have any closely exhausted the tragic potential of that. So it's not too late to find a new balance, to stop and then try to cure the situation, to fix it somehow. Because what's going on in Ukraine, it's definitely a tragedy of the Ukrainian nation, Ukrainian people, but it's also a great tragedy of the Russian nation and the Russian people. And it's important to help it stop and prevent it from going straight to hell. I would say, to me personally, there was several titles deconstructing or analyzing or describing the collaboration or survival of artists inside an increasingly totalitarian environment, and that's something I can, of course, refer to. Several studies of Russian history presenting that to newbies. Several acute political stories, such as Navalny case, described in an eponymous book. And then definitely the issue of ongoing mistrust between Russia and the West, that in spite of the periods of détente, almost as if cursed, have been returning to this state of mutual suspicion and tragic inability to long-term cooperate. Yeah, so all of that, I think, is like they're like pieces of a puzzle, and it's the selection, as I said, is the original selection, the long list is very good because it kind of allows you to piece up the patch together and understand why things that are happening right now, in spite seemingly of Mr. Fukuyama's reassurance that the history has ended, and then we're back to the 20th century, the worst manifestation of modern in times that was supposed to be postmodern. All of that is super important. So I think that these particular themes I found very appealing and then interesting to study. You know, first of all, the war has completely shifted the perspective of how we see the interaction between Russia and its former satellites, so to say, the former Soviet republics, and Russia and the West. And from something that seemed to be purely scientific, scholarly study, it's turned into a bloody drama. And then things that have to do with the colonial nature of Russia suddenly have regained huge importance, you know, because if you regard Russia as a slowly disintegrating former colonial empire, that gives you some understanding of what's going on, and then Russia's relations with the West that has mostly undergone the same process back in the 50s and 60s, and Russia's and the West's mutual jealousy towards each other as empires collapsing and empires collapsed, you know, sheds some light into it. And then of course all the social aspects of having a population that lives through these processes with imperial nostalgia, a backward look, the longing to restore what used to be fueling the feeling of self-respect and dignity, and now is so horribly destructive. This all is very interesting and now seems to be more relevant than ever before. Yeah. That, for instance. And then of course you cannot get rid of that context when you're discussing the nominees with the judges. The context is here, and it's so imminent, and it's so dramatic, and it's so present, you know, and it's so influencing the agenda and the way of thinking that definitely the list of the books relevant and hence deserving to be included into the short list is affected by it. Reality is there. Actually, it's here.